Let's just have a quick look at dependent versus independent variable. This is a topic that many of you struggle with a lot. And you are most probably going to get exam questions about independent and dependent variable. The example I'm going to use today will be something that you can relate with, something that you can understand. So firstly, the dependent variable is dependent upon the independent variable. Okay? So that means that when you have the independent variable, that is the thing that you can change. The example I'm going to give you today is that we want to figure out who can eat the most Oreo cookies in 1 minute. So we have two variables in this sentence. The number of cookies in 1 minute. So these are obviously our two variables, right? These are the two things that we're looking at. So we have quantity here in terms of the number of cookies and minute being the time. So if we look at these two variables, the one that I am controlling would be the time, which means that time will be my independent variable here. Number of cookies then is dependent upon the time, and that makes sense because if I decide to double the time, then 2 minutes means that whoever is eating the cookies has more time, and therefore the number of cookies that they eat will be more. So the number of cookies is dependent upon the time. As you've heard now also, I, independent, starting with the letter I can change the independent variable. I cannot change the number of cookies eaten by the learners. But if I decide, no, I didn't bring enough cookies, 1 minute is way too much time, I'm just going to make it 10 seconds. Then I have changed that variable. Also, I haven't written it down here, but remember in any experiment, we have controlled variables. Some examples of controlled variables will be that I am not going to compare a grade 1 learner and a grade 12 learner's ability to eat cookies here. I'm going to compare two grade 12 learners, for example. And then I'm also not going to do the one experiment in the morning at 6 o'clock and the other one just after dinner, because that means that my results are not reliable. So controlled variables are things that you have to control to make sure that the experiment itself has reliable results. Now let's do another example here using the same variables and just switch it around. If we wanted to know how long it takes, let's say a grade 12 learner, to eat 100 Oreo cookies. Dream come true for many of us. 100 Oreo cookies. So how long does it take to eat 100 Oreo cookies? Now the two variables, once again, will be number of cookies as well as the time. But now, what is the thing that I am controlling? I am controlling the number of cookies. So my independent variable here will be the number of cookies. And the time is now dependent on the number of cookies. If I decide I'm just going to make the number of cookies 10, then that will affect the amount of time, because you can clearly think for yourself that eating 100 Oreo cookies takes a little bit longer than eating 10 cookies. So the thing I'm controlling here is the number of cookies. It's very important that you pick up here that a certain thing is not always going to be independent or dependent. It depends completely on that specific experiment. Remember also then, when you go and draw a graph, that we will see our independent variable is on our x-axis and our dependent variable is on our y-axis. So for the first example that we did, time is going to be on our x-axis and number of cookies on our y-axis. And for the second example, it will swap around. Number of cookies will now be on our x-axis and time on our y-axis. Just also make sure, sometimes they ask you to draw a graph and they already tell you on which axis to put which variable. That does not mean that they have given you the independent and the dependent variable. They might have swapped it around. Normally what they're trying to test then is proportionality, directly or inversely proportional. So I've taken an example from a grade 11 question paper This is also applicable in grade 12 because you have to know Newton's laws for grade 12 anyway. So if we look at this experiment, Tsegofatso and Punegi designed an experiment to investigate the acceleration A experienced by a wooden trolley when pulled by force F. They varied the force. This means that the force is the thing that they are controlling. And since they are controlling the force, that tells me already that I am working here with my independent variable as force. For each value of F, they determined the acceleration. They obtained the following results. So as they change the force, they see that the acceleration changed here, which means that force will be my independent variable and acceleration my dependent variable. What was difficult about this work in grade 11 was that we didn't understand that they are increasing the force by adding more mass pieces. No, the mass pieces are actually just increasing the force with which this trolley is going to move, and the mass of the trolley was a control variable here, which meant the trolley weighed 1 kilogram regardless of how much force we exerted on it.